Okay, so we are here with John Preece, who is the Chief Property Officer for Hub Australia. And John, you're in the Greater Sydney area, according to your LinkedIn profile. It's 10 a.m. for you. Yeah, tell us. Okay, so we met once in Austin, but that was the year we did the conference with NAOP, and Anthony Slumbers was our keynote. So that was a good event, but I would have been quite occupied, and so probably didn't get to spend much time with you. So we have met in person, but mostly we see you on LinkedIn, and it's so good to connect. So yeah, tell us about you and your role at Hub and your background and all the things, and then we'll dive in.
Cool. Yeah, we did meet in person, and I distinctly remember it because I was quite intimidated. I met you and Mara and Liz all at the same time, all like there's me like fresh to the industry, sent to Austin to like immerse myself, and then the three of you like all there in front of me, which is awesome. And you introduced, I remember you introducing yourself. I'm a soccer mom, and like from Australia, we're sort of preconditioned that like the soccer moms in the US are like the people you put on the front line if there's issues, right? Because like it's going to get resolved real quick. So I'm just like, oh my goodness, I got these three awesome women in the flex industry right in front of me, and one of them's just like a soccer mom, she's coming at me. But we had an awesome evening, if I remember. And I think we went to Top Golf. I remember hitting golf balls and drinking beer, which was
that would not have been with me. I mean, I could hit a golf ball, but
maybe it was warped and we went to dinner. But but that was 2018, and it's gone, as we just said, it's gone by in an absolute flash, and there's been a bit of
we have to give you props for coming all the way over. Brad is like so committed to showing up to stuff. And then dragging you along, like you had probably recently, I guess you started in March, and then I would have met you, that would have been September. So
that's right.
Yeah. Doing the big trip. So you guys always probably win for coming from furthest away, I suspect.
Yeah, well, look, it's good for us. Whilst it's a big landmass here, we're a small population, so it's good for us to get out and see what's happening in the rest of the world and kind of pull ideas down here and hopefully do things okay. So anyway, none of which answers your question. My background, I'm actually a sort of plastic Australian. So I was born in the UK and moved over here. This is my 20th year in Australia, so my accent's a little bit mixed up. And for those Australians around, they instantly pick me as John the Palm. And when I speak to people back in the UK, it's like you're just Australian through the core. So I'm neither, but love Australia. I'm not going anywhere. I had a family since we've been here and thoroughly settled in. And look, there's worse places in the world to live. Let's put it that way. So I started out my career actually in project management. So I did an engineering degree, went into project management, working with CBRE, did a lot of projects around mainland Europe. I was based in London, but we did a lot of projects around mainland Europe. So I got to travel a whole heap. And really sort of immersed myself in the real estate aspects of what I was doing, as well as delivering some really interesting projects, particularly around Spain. I did a lot of work in Spain, did a huge retail center in Barcelona, which is an absolute blast. And then got an opportunity to move across to Australia. Actually got married, married my wife, Mandy. We came to Australia on honeymoon, caught up with an old friend, and he said, look, there's a job here. Why don't you come? And in a sort of silly little peak, we sort of said, yeah, why not? Let's give it a crack. And we did, and that was 20 years ago. So here we are. I joined DTZ and moved into what was called Occupy Solutions. So basically tenant rep brokerage would be, I guess, the terminology for you guys. Worked there for 7.5, 8 years. And I worked on some really interesting stuff. We did Australia's largest co-location for a telecoms company here, which was 840,000 square feet, about 5,000 employees, which was really exciting, amongst a whole heap of other stuff. And then I joined Knight Frank and spent 7 years at Knight Frank doing a whole heap of roles. Joined there to do tenant representation, moved into leasing.
We went from kind of engineer, project management side to like the front of the house.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. so tenant rep leasing, ran the North Shore business here in Sydney, which is sort of multidisciplinary business over there. And, thoroughly enjoyed all of that. So I sort of CBRE, DCZ, now Cushman and Wakefield, and Knight Frank. Did a long time in the real estate. And whilst I was at Knight Frank, there was this co-working thing happening. The bubbling, it was kind of around the fringes. No one seemed that interested in it, but I don't know, something piqued my interest in that. And I started to do some research in it, started to walk some co-working spaces that were, pretty basic back then, if I'm honest. Tended to be small, run by owner operators, open plan, trestle table, bearded hipsters, all that good fun stuff back in sort of, 2012, something like that. And started to talk to some of the operators around that time and started to do some research. I was fortunate at Knight Frank. There was a lady in our research team that equally had this sort of weird interest in co-working. So I was like, great, let's do something on this.
Alliance, like you're
yeah, it was, which is great. So partly curiosity and interest, partly I can make money out of doing deals with these guys because they're going to grow. So partly self-interest as well. Through all of that, one of the operators I got to speak to was Hub and Brad, who you know well. And over the course of time, by 2017, Brad had got some private equity investment in Hub to grow out the platform. We started chatting and ended up that I moved across and joined Hub. So I had an absolute ball working in real estate, and then got to have this amazing role where I do real estate in the co-working business, the industry that, like I say, I developed a passion for over that time and have done ever since. So I feel blessed to be in the role I'm in. I thoroughly enjoy it. I get to go and, work in the real estate sector, working with landlords, putting together partnership transactions, management agreements, hybrid leases. I get to work with designers to design amazing spaces. I get to go overseas to look at operators overseas and see what incredible things are happening there and how we can constantly improve what we're doing here. And work amongst a fabulous team that over the 5 years that I've been at Hub now has grown from, I think they were sort of 15 to 20 when I joined, and now we're about 150. So we've gone through growth, notwithstanding the challenges of COVID and everything that's thrown at us. So it's been a great journey so far, but it kind of feels like we're only just starting now. We're coming out of the pandemic.
So how many locations do y'all currently have?
We've got 14 at the moment, which
wow.
is about 470,000 square feet. Apologies, I
know we make you
multiplying a number by 10 for some reason, but we're working in square meters here. So
that is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so the sites tend to have some scale, tend to be sort of 2.5 to 5,500. Apologies, 2.5 to 5,500 square meters. So 25,000 to 55,000 square feet. And we think that's important to provide a really good range of amenity, to have a really robust community in a space, and to enable us to provide the level of service that our customers demand. Of course, you need a critical mass of customers to be able to support the number of employees we need to put into a space to provide that service. So that scale is important on a number of different levels.
That's amazing. So how many deals are you currently working on? I mean, what's your growth strategy? Kind of what are y'all trying to target?
So the plan we have at the moment, to answer your question directly, I'm working on 14 transactions right now that will see us double in size or close to it.
Okay.
Our plan over the course of the next 3 years, and we seem to do, we roll in every 6 months, we dust off the 3-year plan and just make sure it's current. But the plan is in 3 years, we are about double the size now. I actually think, given the deals we're working on, we'll probably go a little bit more than that, but we'll double in size over the course of the next 3 years. So we're not going crazy. 5, 6 sites a year is sensible for us. When we open a site, we want it to be an absolute success. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew. And now that we're partnering with landlords, that clearly there's sort of heightened focus on that, because it will only take one partnership that goes wrong, and as we all know, bad news travels much more quickly than good news. So we want to make sure everything we do is done right and done well.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, are you exclusively doing landlord like creative structures, or will you still sign leases if it makes sense?
I would say it would be a real exception to the rule for us to sign a lease. Like we are very much focused on landlord partnerships, and partnerships can be in various forms. You know, a management agreement or a service contract at one end, a hybrid lease that does have some form of a guaranteed base rent with a profit or revenue share at the other end, and everything in between. So we're very focused.
No two are the same, right?
No two are the same, which is hard. You know, when you go to a landlord who's kind of exploring these partnerships, I've learned pretty quickly when you go and say, hey, like we can do anything. Like that's a bad way to approach it. You've got to say, hey, we've got these models. There's a management agreement. There's a hybrid lease. Which one do you want? Now we know that we'll end up in a different position, but you need to start from a point of certainty and having something that's easy to understand. So that was a swift learning when I just went and said, hey, we can do anything.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want anything. Just want you to tell me what to do.
Exactly. There's a study that I refer to a lot. I call it the JAM study. It's been published in Harvard Business Review. Some researchers like went to the mall or something, and they presented jam for people to sample and then buy. And if they had, 3 options, people tried, made a choice, bought the jam. If they had like 16 options, people totally overwhelmed, won't make a decision, walk away. So that reminds me a little bit of that. It's like if there's too many choice, people like get indecisive and can't move forward. Human nature. Yeah.
All right. So here comes the first curveball of the session. So talk to me about your family. And I saw this, you posted it and wishing everyone a happy holidays and everything. So why don't you talk to us about this crew here?
Yeah. So there's a place in New South Wales, which is the state in which Sydney is based, called Orange, and it's about a 4.5 hour drive inland, so central west New South Wales. It's a beautiful part of the world. It's a decent sized country town, and that photograph is taken when we went to Orange just before Christmas. We get up to Orange, I don't know, 3-4 times a year, and everyone says, oh, we've got family there, why do you go there? I can't explain why we go there, except it's one of those places that as a family we go, we love, we relax, we feel comfortable. I think in a strange sort of way it reminds me of where I grew up in the UK, which was in the countryside. Different style of countryside, don't get me wrong, but just friendly people, just a nice place to be. So that's us in Orange just before Christmas.
And so real quick, John, for anyone, I forget, sometimes we're on a podcast. So for anyone that's not watching the video, it's a picture of John and his family. And so you mentioned
a huge Christmas tree. So that's my wife, Mandy, my daughter, Caitlin, who is 16. So I'm currently teaching her to drive. And I say I advisedly because my wife tried one lesson and their personalities are so alike. That's just not working out. And that's my son, Henry, who's 14. That's us. That's our close-knit family unit. So, Mandy and I moved to Australia, like I said, 20 years ago. And all of our families are overseas. My wife's from Northern Ireland originally. I'm from England. And that's our family unit here in Australia. All on that side.
What was it about Mandy that drew you to her? What do you love about her?
So I had met Mandy, I can remember it. I'd been around to a friend's house to watch a soccer game. I think it was England against Poland. Not that that's relevant. And went around to his house and he had bought no beers for the game. So I was like annoyed from the off. I was like, mate, how come you've invited me around? There's no beers. So we were stone cold sober, went out after the game, I don't know, maybe 9 o'clock, went down to a place in North London called Islington and literally bought my first beer at the bar and got a tap on the shoulder. And I can't remember, it was Mandy's friend. I can't remember exactly what we said, but it was something along the lines of, my mate fancies you, sort of thing, like we're at school again. Anyway, they'd been out all afternoon, clearly. And Mandy's friend had tapped me on the shoulder by mistake. Should have been tapping my friend on the shoulder. So I was a mistake, which is always nice to find out later. But anyway, from there, we got to know each other. And that was a long time ago now. We came to Australia on honeymoon. So that's, 20 years ago we've been married. And we were probably 5 years before we got married. We were together. Okay. So love it to bits.
Well, that's awesome. I just saw your face light up earlier when you mentioned her name, so I had to pull that picture out, and So it's great to see those big smiles. I mean, it's easy to work when you're working for that, right? When you're working for a better life for your family and everything else. So it certainly makes it worthwhile, right?
It really is, and it helps you. Not that I always get the prioritization right, and I'd be kidding myself if I did, but it does help you to prioritize things. Because every day that you don't spend with your family, you never get back. And particularly now, where my kids are 16 and 14, and they're going off with friends and stuff. And whilst the first few Saturday afternoons, you go, how cool is this? We can actually go out for lunch and just be together. And then after a few months, you go, hey, the kids will be gone soon and we're going to miss them. And it puts a different focus on, spending quality time with them, which is really easy to say, but it's quite challenging to do when you get just caught up with life admin and sports and work and everything else that just happens.
Yeah, you live a pretty active lifestyle, right?
Try to. Try to. I enjoy getting out for I used to say run. Let's say jog. That's more accurate now. I used to get out and run. I still like to get out and jog. I like to go on long walks. I just like to be outside. We live in a place where the climate is good, so I like to get out and enjoy it. The kids, my son is wildly into his sports and desperately not into schoolwork. My daughter is more diligent on the schoolwork and not so keen on sports. So there's always stuff happening around the family as well. But yeah, I like to be active. I like to get outside. No doubt about it.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to sneak back to Henry and Caitlin in a little bit, but now let's get back to business. So talk to us about kind of how you're building out your spaces, right? I mean, I've seen some of your videos and stuff like that. So kind of what are you seeing in Australia from an enterprise standpoint? I mean, how are things shift? How have things shifted pre-pandemic, or have they, right? And then kind of how are y'all kind of pivoting to kind of re-strategize?
Yeah. So our model evolves, our design evolves with each site we do, because it has to, right? You've got to keep up, and you can't just replicate what you did last time. We've always been at pains at Hub to not have a standard aesthetic. So Gio, you flicked up a couple of photographs earlier of Hub locations. We've got different styles of buildings. We've got somewhere in state heritage buildings. We've got somewhere in shiny new. The one I'm in right now is a Brookfield-owned shiny new, premium grade CBD glass tower, and everything in between. So to have a standardized aesthetic for us just doesn't fit, because we've got different locations, different demographic of customers, different styles of buildings, and they warrant a different style of design. Now, what we do hold dearly is, and hopefully it rings true, that when you walk into a Hub site, it feels the same. So whether you're walking into a premium grade Hub site or you're walking into a state heritage building, there's that feeling, and that feels the same, even though the aesthetic might be different. We also aim for some consistency over the amenity, so a customer going from site to site to site knows what they can expect when they walk into that site. So we're constantly evolving the design and the aesthetic because of the nature of the building, the demographic, the location. We're constantly looking at the amenity, what is being used, what is in demand, what is perhaps less used but still important, because utilization stats don't always tell the full story. And what's happening elsewhere, what is happening in other spaces in our sector that our customers might love that we're just not across yet. So, getting overseas, looking at other operators is really important part of what we do. With little old Australia, we're a long way from anywhere. So getting out and sharing ideas is really important for us. So we're constantly evolving within the Hub brand. The bigger picture of the evolution of the business is looking at different brands for different locations and different prospects. So where some in our sector are a house of brands, so I have a collection of different brands for different business models and for different styles of space. We're a branded house. So the sites you walk into, Gio, the one behind you that no one could see right now is Hub Southern Cross in Melbourne. That's a Hub branded site. It's got a Hub sign on the front desk. We've just started to roll out, and this was something that, thank you. Gio's just bent down so we can see the Hub sign for that. One thing that COVID triggered an immediate reaction from us was, after the panic, it's like, oh my God, the world's ended. No, it's not. It's all good. The original business plan was like build out all of the Australian state CBDs, then do the good fringe locations, then get to metropolitan, then go regional. When COVID hit, one of the first things we said, we've got to bring forward the metro strategy. Like work near to home is a thing, and it's going to be huge moving forward. We've got to bring that forward. And you guys know what the lead time on a, when you've made that decision to finding a site, to doing the design and building out. So even though we made that decision a couple of years ago, we opened our first one last week.
I saw your post. I was excited to hear more about that. Yeah.
So I'll come back to that. But we've developed a brand called Hub Local, which is for the metropolitan and regional sites. The commercial metrics in a metro or regional site are very different to a CBD. And like the hotel chains, and I could pick anyone, but maybe the Hilton and the DoubleTree by Hilton, like they're both good, but they're catered to a different market. We wanted to make sure that when people walk into a hub or a hub local, they know what the expectation is of the service they'll get, the physical amenity that's in that space, so we don't confuse between the two brands. So they're the two hub brands, and then of course, with the partnerships we do with landlords, increasingly landlords are looking to us and saying, well, I actually want my own brand on this. Whether that's because it's a brand new development, they've invested hugely in a building brand, or maybe it's an owner that carries their own brand that they're quite attached to. So of course, then we've got, Buy Hub, and we've got a couple of sites right now, Civic Quarter in Canberra, Civic Quarter Buy Hub, and then we've got purely white label. So here in Sydney, we've got a site that we manage for the Paul Ramsay Foundation, which happens to be a philanthropic organisation. And if you went into that site, you wouldn't even know that hub exists in there. It's completely white labelled because the Paul Ramsay Foundation, given what they do, it's their brand, it's their building. We run flex space. We actually run their own headquarters, but we also run the flex space in there, which is targeted at not-for-profits and social enterprise. So the Paul Ramsay Foundation brand on that is absolutely paramount. Like I say, you wouldn't even know we're in there. So they're the sort of four brands that we're operating under at the moment. That will again evolve over time, but Hub Local, Buy Hub, and then pure white label, so that we can deliver what our landlord partners want from us, rather than having a fixed sort of one size fits all that actually doesn't fit anything.
So who's an ideal partner for you?
An ideal partner. So it ranges. So just in what I've just outlined there, at the one end we've got the Paul Ramsay Foundation, which is a not-for-profit, and Paul Ramsay Foundation approached us, and there's a lot to like about that. From our ESG objectives, we're a B Corp, we're carbon neutral, we give away memberships each year to not-for-profits and social enterprise. And it was just a really interesting opportunity for us to look at and go, look, that's just, there's so much to love about that. Let's get our arms around it, even though that probably wasn't something that I was out specifically. In fact, it definitely wasn't something I was out specifically looking for. But when it presented, it's kind of like, I love this. Like, let's give it a good run. And we were successful with that. And we're a year into that relationship, and it's going well. At the other end, the building I'm in now, we've partnered with Brookfield, global institutional property owner, big brand new developments, premium grade CBD. And they've got very specific requirements of what they want to deliver for their tenants, what the flex space needs to do, and we can respond to that, in this case with a fully hub branded site. And there are others we're working on that will be co-branded with them as well. So you've kind of got bookends there of a not-for-profit social enterprise. We've got small private owners that might own a handful of buildings, and then you've got kind of global institutional investors at the other end. I think the important thing for us, though, is finding out pretty quickly what their aspirations are and how they want to deliver on them. I think we've all had conversations with owners, and they just go, John, I've got some really crap space. I was thinking co-working or a gym. What can you do? I just go, I can thank you for the coffee and not continue the conversation. Because we've kind of, the industry's moved on from taking the crappy basement space with no natural light, because people don't like it. So they're the ones you've got to sift out really quickly. But I have to say, like, I was going into the pandemic having so many conversations that kind of it's like wading through treacle at times, that, you know, people were hearing and they understood, but they just didn't want or need to do anything about this amenity and service for their tenants. And then the pandemic happened, and a lot of those conversations took on a new life, and now we're sort of delivering on a number of those conversations as well. So I wouldn't say there's a particular style of investor, because it could be a global insto, it could be a local private, but it's a property owner that fully understands what they want to deliver for their occupiers, for their future customers, and they want to partner with the experts to help them deliver that, rather than just backfill some crap space.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. I mean, I'll tell you, that was part of when on the back end of my Regis 4.5 years. I mean, the last year was really going around talking to landlords about underutilized space, right? Whether it be in the malls, the airports, some of those things. And so it was so interesting to have those conversations, because a lot of times we were trying to create monetizable space somewhere that wasn't monetizable, right? And so I think that's where we've seen a major shift. And I'd probably say Australia is ahead of the US as far as the landlord engagement goes. Certainly the UK is, for sure. But I think we're just now getting there, right? We're just now getting to the point where landlords are realizing how important flex is for their future, whether it be a co-working, executive suite, town hall, spec suites. There's so many different names we could call the flex industry. And it's just, and goes back to really the question that you know I posed for you, and you answered it really well, is starting with what's your why, right? The good old Simon Sinek. What are you trying to achieve, Mr. Landlord, and why do you want to achieve it, right? You know, and that answers so much from the standpoint of, are you trying to be an amenity? Are you trying to monetize the space and get a premium? Are you trying, what are you driving, right? What are you trying to ultimately? And I think that's a question that a lot of people don't ask. They don't have those conversations. Frankly, there's operators out there don't even know to have that conversation. And I think that's where Jamie and I get to connect with people and really help them understand better what they're trying to achieve. As far as competition goes, I mean, obviously we start off by, you know, talking about, you know, some of your competitors that Jamie's had on. I mean, and I think the beauty of it is we call it competition, but I learned early in my career, it's really co-opetition, right? Because you're competing and collaborating with some of these people. I mean, Toby has an incredible product over at Cube and some of those things. And so, I mean, kind of, how do you see that landscape playing out as far as the different brands go, and kind of how everyone's playing in the sandbox together?
Wait, I also want to insert, I am wildly impressed with the group that is, and I assume you've been involved in this, the flexible workspace, the new association.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge commitment to collaboration and sort of, you know, the rising tides, what do they say? Rising tides raise all boats. Yeah, so Gio's the new co-president of the Global Workspace Association. And I remember Fiona calling me and being like, you know, trying to figure out, like, how does Australia get more involved? And I think we just always got stuck on the time zones. And then, so, you know, COVID hits and you guys are like, we're doing it on our own then. And if, you know, really put something special together with it seems like tremendous engagement from the operators in Australia. So high five.
It's going really well.
We'll start with my question, and then you can get complicated with her question. Mine is easier than her.
But it's related to
It's totally related, but I mean, you had to one up me. I mean, all right.
Anyway, related to sandbox and what's the environment, and maybe general vibe for, like, to bring it back to Gio's question. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll deal with Buzz so I don't upset anyone. Look, I think sometimes the hotel analogy is overused with our sector, but I think there's lots of direct relevance. And coming to the competition question, which was the core of that, Gio, look, just because the 5-star Hyatt opens up on Sydney Harbour doesn't mean that the 1-star Formula One at Sydney Airport goes broke, because they're there for different purposes, for different demographics and different price points. So from our perspective, like all, within reason, the more competition, the better, because different individuals, different organisations want different things. And if I used a really live example for us, so there's a company here called Watso. And Watso are almost exclusively metropolitan and regional operator. Hub, for transparency, Hub has a informal relationship with Watso, where their customers can use our space, because at the moment we're predominantly CBD based and they're predominantly metro, and vice versa. And that was something during COVID, we just went, hey, like, let's try this out. Now, Jessie who runs Watso, Jessie and Tim at Watso, Jessie will often say, and she said it in public, so I'll use her words. We've got this relationship with Hub. Hub's the 5-star boutique hotel, and we're the 1-star backpacker. Now, that is not true of Watso. I can tell you their product's really, really good. But we offer a very different physical environment. Where we're very much aligned is the customer service piece. So irrespective that it looks quite different, and the amenity suite is quite different, like Watso is really focused on service, and so are we. So there's an alignment there. And I use that example of very different locational and physical fit out that still caters to a market. Like the Watso business goes really, really well. We go really well in the CBDs, and quite different. And there's everything in between. So I think it enriches the sector with more competition. I think with more competition, we will see potentially some entrants into the market that don't succeed and drop away. And unfortunately, over the last few years, we've seen a few players in the Australian market go broke, and you don't want to see any operator go broke, because it's just a bad look on the sector. But we will see that with more competition when people are finding their feet. But like hotels, like I say, there's diversity in offering for everything from the roadside motel to the 6-star hotel, and our sector is developing in that way as well. And I think that's a really good thing, to have a more robust sector with greater diversity. And for property owners as well, it's good for them to have a range of operators to be able to select who they partner with to put flex space in their buildings, because I think there's an acknowledgement that Gio dropped off. I bored him.
Beard.
I literally bored him into submission. How's that? He's left his own podcast.
Maybe he's actively trying to butt in on the question. Oh, we'll come back. Proceed.
He'll come back. But anyway,
right,
my point was
not a fit for every building, right? I think that makes it makes sense. Yeah, and I also love the more competition, perspective is like, look, if flex presents itself as, maybe not the default option, but something that is being considered, in every real estate portfolio decision for an occupier, it's better to have more options, and also like clear that there's a stake in the marketplace. Like flex is, a true solution. So yeah.
Which now brings me, now Gio's not here, we can chat. Brings me back to the FWA. Yeah, delighted that got off the ground. There's been a number of attempts over the years to get something off the ground in Australia. It hasn't quite worked out, but there was a critical mass of support behind it. That we got off the ground. It's been around a year for now, the Flexible Workspace Australia. And we left your question entirely when you left there, Gio.
That's right. I mean, Jamie's got a button that turns my Wi-Fi off, so therefore she can move on. It's funny, when she's got a lot of power, you'd be surprised. She controls. It's kind of like a mute button.
I've told you, soccer mums, right? That's just like all powerful.
They are.
Wait, even better. Now I'm a soccer referee.
Perfect.
Can you imagine giving Jamie a whistle? And
oh my God, I am really kind of bossy in that uniform. It's
not easy. Yeah, I refereed the kids sport, soccer and rugby union, and like even at kids level, it's not easy, because all the parents are watching you on the sidelines. And
totally. Well, and also, I mean, don't get me started with like 12-year-old boys and their sportsmanship and.
So what age groups are you refereeing?
I mostly do like, 10 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll sideline ref for the older age groups. That is, yeah, I just need to kind of warm up to the, full field, older. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I played. I don't know why I feel intimidated by doing the older age groups. I probably will next year. Yeah.
Probably because they talk back and they're little punks. That's why. And
No, I'm telling you, the 12-year-old boys are the worst. I think as
Yeah.
you get older, it's probably slightly better.
do you think the parents are worse than the kids? I think the parents are the worst. That's why I
sometimes-
quit coaching.
Yeah, we had some real problems this year. I mean, I'm talking about recreational soccer. Yeah, I had, oh my gosh, I won't get into it. It's not worth it. But yes, sometimes parent and parent/coaches who want their team, darn it, in the tournament, and they don't get in the tournament. One dad who's also a coach was texting me and the head of our referee group at like midnight and wanted to audit the game cards from the like quarterfinals because he thought there was a substitution violation. I mean, it was like because he wanted his 10-year-old team in the final game.
I mean, and it's just ridiculous. So speaking of, we'll shift away from Jamie's issues with her refereeing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, do both Henry and Caitlin play sports, or one or the other? What do they play?
Yeah, they both play sports, but Henry's just like wildly passionate about his sports, whereas Caitlin less so. So we kind of have to encourage her a little bit, but she's more artistic than sporty. But look, they're at a school where they're expected to do sports, so they kind of have to. So Henry, he's played rugby union since he was 5. His height hasn't quite kept up with the game. My wife's quite short, and he's picked up my wife's height. So last season, I think was his last season, but he also referees. So he's been refereeing for a few years now, the kids rugby union. So he keeps his hand in there. He is currently doing, we're just getting to the end of the rowing season. So we were just down in Canberra for a rowing regatta over the weekend. He's been playing cricket. The cricket season's just coming to an end. And the soccer trials start next week. So he hasn't played soccer for a while. I used to manage his soccer team. He's taken a few years out whilst he was doing rugby union and decided to get back into that.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's always got a bit going on. I think he intentionally loads himself up with sport to avoid schoolwork. I think it's a measured exercise for him. My daughter, she's been doing touch rugby, which is 7-a-side, not full tackle. As the title suggests, it's a touch tackle. And then she plays netball, which I don't think is particularly common in the US. It's, how would I describe netball? It's kind of like basketball, but you can't run with the ball. When you get the ball, you've got to stand still. So it's all about passing, teamwork, pass the ball and real quick. So it's actually an awesome spectator sport, netball, and some of the fiercest parents I've experienced in any children's sport are netball. Yeah, straight up. So yeah, look, there's always lots of sporting stuff. The weekends, like the rowing at the moment, Henry is, he's 4 times a week training, then Saturday or Sunday morning, rowing regattas, trying to squeeze cricket around that and everything else. And getting Caitlin's Saturday sports as well. So there's, like most parents with kids, right? Your weekends are fairly well consumed. Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. So obviously you've instilled some of your work ethic and your passion in your kids. So you can't use those two. What would each of your kids, 2 things each of your kids would say they love about you?
Oh wow, that's a big question. Don't
cry.
No, I'm trying to think. My daughter, I can't remember when she did it the first time, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I think it was a Father's Day. She wrote me a letter and put it inside my Father's Day card. And I took her aside afterwards. I said, look, it's like, the gifts and stuff, like, awesome, thank you. Like, the best thing was this letter where she thanked me for just like being there and helping her with schoolwork and getting her to sports and just all the basic stuff you do as a parent. It was just like a thank you letter and just saying how much she loved me. And that was just like the best thing ever. Every year.
So just being present, right? I mean, being present is huge.
Just spending time with them. And every year since she's written me one of these letters. I got one at Christmas just passed, and it's the most beautiful thing you can receive from a child who's now 16. That you wouldn't necessarily be the first thing that most 16-year-olds would think about doing for one of their parents. My son, what would he say? He would probably just laugh and probably come out with an expletive and wander off. But I suspect if you managed to draw a sensible answer from him, it would be something along the same. I absorbed a lot of time in him and his sports and encouraging him to do his sports, and that just absorbs time naturally. That when I'm refereeing or I'm managing the team or I'm coaching the soccer team, managing the rugby team, like you're just there and amongst it and just taking part. And I don't think, if I'm honest, I don't think he recognizes it right now, but maybe when he grows up and he looks back, he'll recognize the time that was spent there. But yeah, to answer the question, that's a long answer, Gia. To answer the question, I'd like to think they would both value the time that we spend together. And I think we probably get more time together because we don't have an extended family here in Australia. This the one thing about being in Australia that is difficult. So I grew up in a small village in the UK, right? So I'm pretty sure I was related to half the people that lived in this village. So I could literally walk around the streets and there were relatives everywhere and grandparents and uncles and aunties and cousins and all this sort of stuff. My kids don't have that. All of their family are overseas, so they don't get time to spend with the grandparents, and that's a challenge. But what it does mean is it means that we're close knit as a family. So yeah, I think the time we spend together hopefully would be valued, or if not now, hopefully they'll look back and recognize it.
That's awesome. And so does that translate into the culture that y'all have built at Hub Australia? I mean, is it a big tight knit? I mean, you said you're up to 150 people, right? That's incredible. So how's the culture at Hub Australia?
Yeah, the single biggest thing I noticed when we walked into Hub, Geo, you'll get this. So I came from a brokerage background in real estate where you just get your information, your clients, you hold them tight, and you say, don't let anyone close. And then when someone says, what deals are you working on? You just give them a real thin list and keep all the real stuff to yourself. So you can have this veneer of like, everyone's pally and we're all a team and we're all getting on. But at the end of the day, you're commission motivated and, you get commission by doing deals and preferably on your own, but not sharing that commission. So it drives a certain behavior, and it's not quite as brutal here in Australia as it is, or my sense at least that it is in the US, having spoken to some colleagues there over many years. Coming into Hub, it was almost like unnecessary sharing of information.
You really need to tell me that?
Exactly, which is wonderful because you get to develop relationships with people on a real real basis with real people, and not just business. And as a business, we've invested in the culture. We do the Great Places to Work. I think this year is year 4 of Great Places to Work, which provides a really good framework for us to make sure that our people have a great day at work, and obviously that the culture is central to that. On the basis that if that's our starting point and everyone at Hub has a great day at work, there's a far higher chance that they'll encourage all of our customers to have a great day at work as well. So the culture is really important. Of course, it gets more difficult the bigger the team gets. But provided we maintain our values, we keep our behaviors in check, we can keep consistency across the culture. Albeit, you do notice, for example, our head office, so our national team are split across Sydney and Melbourne, and you do notice there's a little bit of cultural difference between those two teams. Not a stark difference, but there is a little bit of difference just because of distance. But look, we hold our values and hold our behaviours that hopefully there's going to be a consistent culture. And when our customers come in, that, like I say, it's part of that feel, right? It's part of that feel. How does it feel at Hub? Well, it only feels a certain way if the guys that work in the clubhouse are enjoying their time and they're part of Hub and what we're about and delivering the services to customers. That's the feel. The physical space that I do and I love doing doesn't really create the feel. It's the people. and that's what's absolutely paramount. So yeah, culture's really important, and we invest a lot of time and energy and a lot of money into it as well, because it's really important.
I think this business is really interesting / challenging because, I mean, it's maybe like a hotel, but even a hotel experience is pretty transient, right? So to your point, the space doesn't create the feel, but it is the start of it. You just can't leave it there. So it's this magic, like a magical interplay among space and design, and then the vibe and the culture and the people, and you have to have all of it. And Gio and I talk about this a lot. It's not that common for operators to be able to deliver on both of those. People can create beautiful spaces and then just fall flat on, the experience. Like, it's just not, it doesn't feel, you don't feel anything when you're in there. And so to be able to do both is really unique. And I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why you love the hub so much, because you're doing both of those things, kind of combining.
We see ourselves as a hospitality business first and foremost. So you're right, Jamie, like the physical space is important because that sets the platform, the foundation. But then you need this service, this hospitality-led service overlay to actually bring it to life and maintain it. And some of the most rewarding things for me are handing over new sites, because kind of that's core day-to-day work for me, and I love doing that. You look at a space, go, awesome, right, let's go on to the next one. But even better than that is when, and I had there was a lady that came over from Brookfield and came in to have a look at the space here only last week, and she walked in, and I met her as she came out the lift, and she walked in, she went, wow, this feels amazing. And just that, not it looks amazing or like what an amazing reception counter, it was like, this feels amazing. And you go, that's it, that's exactly what we're after.
The best compliment.
When someone walks in, it is the best compliment ever. Hopefully she liked how it looked as well, because that's what I do. But the feeling she had was exactly that. It was a feeling. It feels great. So yeah, that's the most rewarding thing. So if we can maintain that, and as we expand the platform and get more sites and more customers, then we'll be delighted. And I think at the core of that has to be that hospitality mentality and that hospitality-led service. That people feel good when they walk into a space. Like when you walk into a bar or a restaurant, you keep going back to those places that you feel comfortable or you feel great, and those places that you don't go back.
Yeah, and I think so much of that is the hospitality side is so much data driven, right? It's understanding what the customer wants, understanding what works, what doesn't work, and you did an article, or I guess an interview last year, Hub, what was it, Zero to Hero or something like that, and one of the questions was around technology, right? And so I found it so interesting how y'all track temperature, you track CO2, you track, so explain to me that. I mean, I think one of them was utilization too. So I mean, how are y'all tracking all that stuff? I mean, do y'all have sensors? Do you have camera? I mean, what are you using?
So winding back, let me tell you what the tech is. So we've got a system called Bellwether, which is at its core, it's a retail system for retail footfall. We've implemented that so that we know how many people are in each site at any point in time in real time. And there's about a 9 to 10 minute lag on it, but it's effectively real time. We selected that because the cameras do facial recognition, so they're accurate, but they do not push any facial recognition data outside of the camera itself. So it's all processed inside of the unit. All that comes out is numbers. So we know it's accurate, and we can also say with confidence to our customers, we are not tracking you. All that comes out of this system is a number. So that was important to maintain privacy, but also to give us accurate data. Now, the core of the reason the core of that set that up was compliance. So, flex spaces occupy buildings that are higher density than they're typically designed for. And you've got to upgrade the buildings, but also you're getting certification at a certain density. So the core of that was compliance, and that was way before COVID. We've done that for a number of years. When COVID hit, our immediate thought was, how can we provide data that makes people feel comfortable coming to these spaces? because some people were coming in throughout COVID, and they were either because they had to or because they just felt comfortable. But it's, what about the people who are not back yet? How can we give them confidence? So that's when we started to roll out CO2 and temperature sensors. So we use Nube, N-U-B-E, that do temperature and CO2. They're battery powered, really easy to install. You do need some server kit on site to support that. But a really simple system and really quick to install. And yeah, you're right. We have screens in all of our sites that display them. They take the density information, and we quickly turn that round in COVID to how many people per square meter, because that was a metric that was constantly on the news feed here in Australia, like 4 square meters a person. We just go like, we don't get anywhere near that. Like, don't panic. And of course, during COVID, some of the sites are like 400 square meters a person in here at the moment. But just displaying that and saying, hey guys, it's fine. The air quality is fine as well. So we display, the CO2, and then we display what the range should be. So people don't just look at a number and go, yeah, that's nice. What does it mean? It's kind of like, that's the range. That's where we're at. And then temperature as well. So we got those monitors through the site, and we display that in each of the sites. Yeah, again, it was that was one of the things triggered by COVID to make people feel comfortable. But the feedback was so good, we've continued that on, and that's in all of our sites. So it's really basic data, but it's data that people can have confidence in when they walk into the site.
Well, I mean, you say it's basic, but I mean, it's those things are difficult to track and monitor and do all those things. And so I love the fact that you guys care so much that you have that information, right? So I mean, even for you, that's all stuff that makes it easier to sell when you go create these partnerships, because you have real data on utilization, real data on the ESG side of driving some of these initiatives that so many of these large landlords are really pursuing and going after. So I mean, kudos to y'all for going above and beyond.
The density information is invaluable for me in that regard, because a lot of landlords, within the first 5 minutes, it's kind of like, oh, density, I don't want this, is going to ruin my lifts.
It's so funny because I'd forgotten about that objection. That was like an early co-working, but I guess landlords still
there. Yeah,
have that concern.
And there's again, this comes back to Australia being a small market. There was one building in Sydney that a global co-working business went into, where they had disparate floors. They weren't contiguous floors, no internal stairs. So all of their customers and one of those floors had all the common amenity. So the common amenity wasn't shared through this. So the lifts got an absolute hammering. And of course, that was it. Yeah, put these co-working operators into your building, like, it's just going to ruin your lifts. It's going to ruin it forever. And
because of just bad, that was a bad decision that the operator made, and didn't.
It's a bad setup.
Logistical, yeah.
Spot on. Yeah. But then, like you say, Gio, you get the real data and go, okay, well, look, here's 13, 14 sites. Here's how they're occupied. Like, this is no greater density in real time than a traditional office space. So,
or even parking, right? I mean, here in the US, we park, ideally we want 4 per 1,000, but obviously in urban settings, you don't get that. But even the conversation around how often is that utilized, right? And, there's so many factors that go with that. I mean, even your staffing, right? How much your average, occupancy is at any given time helps you staff the facility correctly.
Yeah, cleaning, maintenance, the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you see the future? What's not just the future for Hub Australia, but what do you see coming out of this economic time that I think worldwide we're facing coming out of COVID and everything? I mean, so where do you think we're headed as a flex industry, as a CRE overall? Kind of what are your predictions?
That's a huge question. I honestly think, in terms of CRE and work practices, the changes that have been accelerated / brought about by COVID, we're going to see changes in work practices of a quantum and significance that we haven't seen since the Industrial Revolution. And I say that in all seriousness with a straight face, because I just think the way people work, and when I say people, let me clarify that I'm talking about office-based knowledge workers. I completely understand that those in healthcare and hospitality that don't have the flexibility that office-based. But some of the predictions, and I've been doing a number of presentations on this. So some of the things that are front of my mind. Organizations leasing 50% less or more than 50% CRE. When you look at the statistics of occupancy pre-COVID, so ignore the pandemic, your average was somewhere between 40 and 60% utilization across various industry sectors, at the higher end on government, lower end on corporations. Currently, I look at the data coming out of the US in your markets, you're hovering about half, 50% of what it was pre-pandemic. So if you assume it was an average of 50% pre-pandemic and we're now at 50% or 50%, like a quarter of the space is utilized. That's horribly wasteful. I just don't see how any organization cannot look at their footprint and go, we've got to radically change how much space we lease and how we facilitate work for our workforce. So that's probably one of the big ones. I think branding of commercial assets will become increasingly important as organizations expect more from their landlords and they align themselves with those landlords that can provide more from them. And when I say more, that's a bland word. But organizations are going to say, hey, I want flex space in this building. I want a shared event space. I want shared meeting spaces. I want services in this space. And they'll align themselves with landlord brands that they have confidence in. So I think branding becomes significantly more important. And in bringing that back to the flex space sector, same thing as I mentioned earlier, we've got a range of hotel brands and different people use different hotels for different reasons, whether it's leisure or business and price point. Organizations and individuals will align themselves with certain flex space brands. So branding holistically around real estate and flexible workspace, I think, becomes increasingly important, and more people will recognize it. The 4-day week, I think, is an interesting one. Lots of trials around that at the moment. A big one in the UK that's been very successful. I think for me, that's next. So once organizations accept that hybrid flexible working is the baseline, and employees go, oh, what else? Like what else could be the 4-day week? Yeah. So I think that's an interesting thing that's happening right now. But when I talk 4-day week, like 100% productivity, 100% salary, 80% time. So just still got to work hard. The salary package workspace is one that I've talked about for a number of years and haven't seen it happen yet. So maybe it never will. But I actually think that the conditions are right to lead in that direction. So I'm looking at you guys, you're probably a little bit younger than me, but you probably hark back to there are days where, as an organizer, you work for an organization and you might get a company car. And then the company went, look, we don't do fleet management. This is a nonsense. Hey, Gio, there's $20,000 extra on your salary. You should go get your own car, mate. Yeah. Mobile phones. All of a sudden they were handing out mobile phones. They're all carrying these huge mobile phones around. And they said, look, we're not in the habit of managing a fleet of mobile phones. Like, there's some money, go get your own phone. Yeah. Laptop PCs now. It's not beyond the realms of doubt where an organization could go, hey, we're in a flexible work environment here. Jamie, there's $15,000 on top of your salary. We've got a really small branded HQ in the city. You don't need to come there if you don't want to. Equally, we recognize that you need a healthy and safe work environment to work from. Go sort it out yourself. Go to your favorite co-working place.
That's the dream, isn't it? I, do just kind of some benchmarking work around community manager surveys. And so I'll go to Indeed and search for co-working just to pull up job descriptions. And all of a sudden, job descriptions, not for co-working roles, have co-working come up as a keyword because it's included in the package. So suddenly it feels like it just is starting to happen. And I love that. It's like this recognition that home is not the only answer. I think we're still, a ways away from sort of mainstream recognition of that. But I think that's an exciting kind of milestone out there that I would love to see us get to.
Yeah, I agree. And staying on that theme, I think it then becomes interesting both from how can the flex space industry, not individual operators, but how can the industry support businesses and organizations first in facilitating access to flexible workspace for their employees at a business level so they can control the spend. And then how do we interact with the individuals who maybe have control of their spend, that want to go to spaces, but also want to be amongst their colleagues in their organization. But how do we help them connect? There's nothing I've seen that's kind of really good at that at the moment. And Microsoft are building out a module for that at the moment. Google's sort of getting into that space as well. But how do we connect those people, not just amongst the community within a flexible workspace, but amongst their own colleagues to pull them into that workspace? So I think there's a lot of evolution around that, of sort of dispersing the workforce, but then also bringing them back together.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I mean, I think to your points, I mean, there's so much runway left for us to continue pivoting and evolving from a strategy standpoint. And so, I mean, I think there's a ton of opportunity. I mean, you guys have obviously done an incredible job capitalizing that with, I mean, over 400,000 square feet is incredible. So, I mean, I want to thank you for playing off of the whole family dynamics, right? For choosing to be present with us today and sharing, the amount of wisdom and things that you have. And I look forward to hearing more about Caitlin driving and your to be patient in that process. So Jim, you got a last question for him?
Well, we are over time, so I'm going to let him go in case he has another meeting or, a landlord to go tackle. But I would say, I feel like we barely scratched the surface. I follow you on LinkedIn. You're really prolific in sort of thought leadership and, conversations on LinkedIn. And so anybody who's listening, John's a great account to follow. We'll link to the show notes, which you can find if you just open your podcast app. John Preece, Preece. You can find him on LinkedIn. You're always thought provoking, and I love to follow your work. So thank you for those contributions too. And we'll have to do this again so we can dive into some of the questions we didn't get to. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. No, it's been fabulous speaking to you both. Great to see you again, Jamie and Gio. Like I said earlier, amazing. My first time meeting an all-star industry news curator, and I'm honored. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, look forward to it. Hopefully I'll be able to get across the US and catch up with you both in person. That would be awesome.